Today, we take a sneak peek at the lifestyle of a man who is so rich, he doesn't know what to do with all his money. He uses the market as a mirror. How did he get his wild success? By taking advantage of the multiple small business programs offered by the government. His company may be small, but his dreams and success are big. He even convinced the Small Business Administration to create his own small business category, emotionally disabled, bearded man-owned businesses.
So as a business, how can you take advantage of the Small Business Administration programs provided by the government and become as incredibly wealthy as I am? Well, now that I've made my millions, I'm getting a little bit more into charity. So it's time for me to give back. I've got some tips for you to take advantage of the small business. Don't tell anyone though. This is millionaire secrets. These secrets are so valuable that I've actually had to write them down on this piece of paper. This paper alone is worth about 20 grand, 30 grand. So the first thing I want to mention is that if you really want to start learning about small business, take advantage of these programs, you probably just want to read FAR Part 19 in its entirety. That's a little bit of a read, but just knowing about the details of the program is good, and a lot of those details are in Part 19. We'll talk later about not wanting to rely too much on a small business status and really bringing out the value of your company. But the truth is that a small business size status really sets you up to be included in a lot more competitions and opportunities. You really want to be in a particular status if you want to take advantage of that. Now, the other thing to just keep in mind is that contracting officers and contracting offices are pressured to use small business. It's in regulation, it's in statute, and it's in their culture. In fact, through regulation, contracting officers have quotas. They have to try to, as much as possible, within a year, award this percentage to service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, or this percentage to women-owned small businesses. So they're required to try to meet those quotas. And in fact, if they don't want to set something aside to small business and they want to do full and open, which means they bring in large businesses, they're going to have to do some paperwork to justify that decision, which means that they're going to have to battle their small business specialists. Basically, it's going to take a lot for contracting officers not to go small business. It's a good thing to be a small business. The government's already directed that way in all the money that they spend. Okay, so on this topic, let's talk about something called the Rule of Two. And I'm going to read from my $20,000 piece of paper here, this Rule of Two. It's very important. Rule of Two is that contracting officers need to set things aside for small business if they have a reasonable expectation of obtaining offers to or more small business, providing competitive results in terms of fair market price, delivery, and quality. Now that's really important. It's price, delivery, and quality. So not only does there need to be two small businesses at least who can say they're doing this thing, but they have to be the kind of small business that provides competitive prices, delivery, and quality in products and services. So we're going to get to this later, but that's why if you are a small business, you can't just rely on your status. You have to have something good to offer, or else you won't fit into this Rule of Two. Here's another example of why using small businesses is so enforced and encouraged in the government. So even if a contracting officer uses a large business, there are subcontracting requirements, which means there's requirements for the prime to try to use small businesses. So even if you're a small business and you don't get the direct award with the government, you can still be a sub based on large businesses' mandatory requirement to use as many smalls as they can. Now, it's not all rainbows and roses and caviar with being a small business. There are some cultural challenges that you need to be aware of. And here's another inside secret. The culture of a lot of acquisition teams and offices is one in which there's sometimes a lack of trust in small businesses. A lot of requirement officials, they have a job to do. They have a contractor that needs to do a really good job, and they will resort internally to thinking that large businesses are the only kind of businesses that can do that job. You've got to change their mind. And again, that's why the Rule of Two applies to not just any small business, but those who are competitive in terms of price, delivery, and quality. So how to become a small business? Well, you have to fit within a certain size standard. What is a size standard? Just a second. A size standard is based on the NAICS code, or the North American Industry Classification. I'll put it on the screen what that means. But basically, each area of industry, service, and products is assigned a particular NAICS code, and the size standard is different for each NAICS code. And if you fall under that size standard, whether it's people, number of employees for products, or revenue that you're bringing in for services, then you're a small business. Now, this video isn't all about the different types of small businesses. I will list them, but that'll be another video we'll do. Really, this is tips on how to take advantage of your status, but I'll just read them off. So there are small businesses, but there's also veteran-owned small business. There's a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. There's something called a HUBZone, which are historically underutilized business zones. And if you operate in that historically underutilized business zone, then you can have a particular status and even get direct awards. Really, the purpose of that is to build up these underdeveloped areas in America. There's 8A. It's called an 8A program. That's for small disadvantaged business. 51% at least owned by socially or economically disadvantaged individuals, and that can definitely be sole source. There's women-owned small business, and this is fairly new, there's economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. So there's special advantages that you can have by being in one of these socio-economic small business groups, like 8A or women-owned small business. That can put you in a bracket that allows you and only you and other women-owned small businesses, for example, to participate. So the more fine-tuned your status, the more opportunities that you have. Okay, yeah, I'll let you take my boat again, but hey, this time you're paying for the gas. All right, Elon, take care. Oh, hi, I was just being rich. Now, before we continue with more tips, I want to explain something about acronyms. We've mentioned WOSB, SDVOSB. Acronyms can be intimidating. They can be confusing if you're just starting off in the government. But you know, they're actually very simple. And there's actually an acronym that explains that. Don't worry yourself about government acronyms. The government would never do anything that was not unnecessarily confusing, overly complicated, or hard to understand. Or the acronym version, Duyaga Tigwanda Taunu Kokotu. So remember, if you're just getting confused by all these acronyms and your heart goes into this dark place, you just want to give up, just take a step back, breathe, relax, and think about the acronym. Duyaga Tigwanda Taunu Kokotu. Okay, now that we've explained size status, I'm going to give you 3 tips to help you get an edge with the small business programs. One is just a helpful tip to help your company, and that's this point that you are not, nor should you be, defining yourself by your status. You define yourself by the quality, delivery, and competitive prices that your company offers. So when you lead off in an elevator pitch conversation with a government client, or you're in an industry day, or you're submitting a capability statement, don't fixate on the fact that you are a women-owned small business or an 8A business. Really what the government wants to know, and again, this goes back to this culture of them already being hesitant about using small business, they want to know what you have to offer. The status is just a great way for you to directly get to them and for them to easily contract with you. It's not who you are, though. Remember the rule of 2. You can't just be a small business. You've got to have the competitive prices, quality, and delivery. So you should be focusing as a small business, not just on getting the status, but building relationships with clients. You should be focusing on offering and communicating your value, being able to effectively say in conversation what the government's problem is, what your solution is, and then the impact of your solution on their mission. If you can do that, that is a lot more meaningful to them than just your small business size status. Number 2, you may actually be in a particular category and not even know it. So one example is not necessarily a small business, but a non-traditional, let's say, company or defense contractor. Now, these kind of companies, non-traditional companies, have special direct access to the government for things like other transactions. And listen to this. This is all it takes to be a non-traditional contractor. That you are not currently performing, or that you have not performed within 1 year of the solicitation any contract with full contract accounting system coverage. So it's not just that you can have a current contract with the government, you just can't have a contract with full CAS coverage. So full CAS coverage, I think the limit is about a $50 million contract. So if you're doing anything under 50 million, you're probably non-traditional, you're safe there, but there's a lot of exceptions to CAS too. I won't list all of them, but small business is an exception. So if you are a small business, you can also be a non-traditional company. Another are firm fixed price contracts, or T&M for commercial services. Basically anything commercial services, because they have to use firm fixed price or T&M. So if you're just doing commercial contracts for commercial services, you are a non-traditional company. You're not under CAS. So many companies are actually non-traditional without knowing it, and they can get direct awards potentially, or at least be part of competitions for OTs. Very powerful. Make sure you know your status. Another is HUBZone. You may be operating or have the opportunity to shift your operations to operate in a HUBZone and take advantage of HUBZone. And remember, I talked about quotas. Contracting offices are pressured, required to meet a certain quota for HUBZone. And so if you are in that HUBZone, or if you can just change your operations or your principal office to a HUBZone, that could help you qualify for a lot more awards. Tip number 3 and final tip. You can, through strategic partnering, take advantage of small business programs, even if you don't qualify for a particular small business. Now, one example is joint ventures, JVs. Now, they're listed in Part 19, but you can join in a joint venture with multiple companies and still take advantage of certain set-asides for, say, HUBZone or service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So if you find a HUBZone partner that you really like working with, you can join a JV together, and then you and that partner can start competing together on those HUBZone set-asides. Same thing with women-owned small business, same thing with service-disabled veteran-owned small business. It's a really good tool. The other thing is the mentor-protege program. So that allows you as a large business to be a mentor for a small business as the protege, and you can go together and compete together on requirements. Now, you're mentoring that business to come into the market and work with the government, but you are also receiving rewards for being part of that partnership. Again, a large business taking advantage of small business programs. Here's some strategic partnerships on the small business side. If you're a small business, well, there's the mentor-protege. If you need help, you can team up with a large business mentor, but don't underestimate the potential for subcontracting opportunities. Remember, the large contractors on huge contracts, they have subcontracting plans they have to submit, and they have to divulge to the government the quotas, the percentages of work that they're shoveling off to small businesses. You can be one of those small businesses. It's really important strategically that you start getting to know or partnering with some of these large businesses that have really big contracts with government clients. You could potentially help them with their quotas needed on subcontracting plans. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's actually a lot we can talk about with the small business programs. We really didn't scratch the surface, for example, on 8A programs, on women-owned small business. If you found this beneficial and you want us to keep talking more about these programs and how you can benefit from them, comment down below and we will reward you with your requests. Now, it's time for my midday snack, if you'll excuse me. I'm so rich.